So, our next kind of big idea that we're going to talk about with exploitative play and something that we're going to see all over the course is the idea of playing against villains who prematurely split their range and kind of unpacking that idea a little bit. Most of the time, it manifests in type 3, type 4, type 5 players unable to lay in wait and trap with strong hands and prematurely splitting their range and raising a lot of strong hands and just calling with their weaker part of their range. This can happen pre-flop, this can happen flop, turn, different streets, and we'll look at different examples, but this is something we could take advantage of in a number of ways, and it's really kind of shows you why computers and top players often play mixed strategies, and they'll be either randomizing or choosing different frequencies to play the same hand in different ways, as that's kind of the defense against this premature range splitting, is to play these sort of mixed strategies where you may do different things some percentage of the time with the same hand. And of course, also finding some hands that are pure traps and should be pure check calls. And basically, we're going to be getting into a lot of spots against these players where we're encouraged to bluff them because they've prematurely split their range, or we're able to bet and then fold against them, bet fold for value, kind of betting for value and then folding because we know they may prematurely split their range and kind of tell us that we're beat. So this is something that you don't really see too much against type 1 players, also type 2 players maybe a little less frequently, but if we put ourselves in our opponent's shoes and put ourselves in the tight rec or the tight pro's shoes, when they do flop a set on a wet texture or turn 2 pair on a board with straight draws out there and face a bet, they're often very concerned with protection and getting more money in the pot right away, like ending the hand, getting their chips in good and running the cards out, and less concerned about what it does to their range when they always raise their good hands and only call their mediocre or weaker hands. It's an idea of ranges and kind of how that affects our strategy if we do believe our opponents are doing this. So we're going to look at first example here from a main event down in the Bahamas. I believe it was a party poker 5K event, probably 3 or 4 years back, and we're playing against a Type 5 recreational type player in the big blind here. And despite the blinds being big, this was early in the tournament. I think this tournament started maybe 5K big blind, 1 million starting chips, something like that, and 700K deep, so it's about 70 blinds. I open the low jack with queen jack offsuit, big blind defends, 965 rainbow, big blind checks. I bet 32K and the big blind calls. And immediately when I get a call from a type 5 player here in the big blind, I almost completely discount him having 2 pair or better, because type 5 players here, when they flop 2 pair with 5-6, when they flop a set with 7-8, when they flop a set of fives, almost certainly will put in a check raise. And they don't really consider the implications of always raising with these hands and then getting to the turn with this range of hands that is massively weighted towards 1 pair, straight draws, this kind of thing. So I bet 60% pot, big blind calls. There's now 123 in the middle of the turn is a 2. And in spots like this, we're looking to take advantage of it on cards that are unlikely to help villain's range here. So 2 of diamonds falling pretty squarely into that range where really only concerned with kind of like suited combinations that contain a deuce and just were 1 pair on the flop and have now improved to 2 pair. And that's pretty low. Also, playing against a type 5 player who has this kind of restricted defending range in the big blind may even be folding hands like 9 deuce suited, 6 deuce suited pre-flop. So the deuce is a great card. 3-4 also, like we don't even know if he defends the 3-4 suited, as this is a tighter player, because this does complete the 3-4. Big blind checks, and using this idea of the premature range splitting and the idea that now that he's gotten to the turn on this check call line and doesn't have any hands better than 1 pair, we're able to play very aggressively and attack this range, even with queen high. And sizing up here and using about 150K into 123K, knowing that kind of the best hands he's going to have are this top pair 9 hand. And thinking about not only are we going to put aggression here on the turn, but also put him to a tough decision on the river if he does stick around here on the turn, knowing his range does contain some kind of one pair and straight draw combo hands like 8-9, 6-7, 5-7, these types of hands that may stick around on the turn for a big bet, but are going to have a hard time hero calling the river with one pair on most runouts. There will be some rivers, obviously, we can't bluff, but there will be a lot of rivers where we're looking to bluff. And also, because we kind of have this defined range of our opponent, we're able to use this exploitative sizing thing on the river here, where say we were called on the turn here, as villain, spoiler, he does fold on the turn, but say big blind does call here on the turn and we river a queen or a jack, there's now 400k in the pot. Villain's playing a little more than the pot, and we can kind of split our range against our opponent's likely top pair range and play shoves with our bluffs and kind of a smaller value size when we river a queen or a jack. And against a type 5 opponent, this is probably going to be a good idea and a profitable strategy. So this is just one example of kind of how opponents' range splittings can work against them and how we can take advantage of that. This is an idea we're going to hit on a lot throughout the course, and this is just one example how a flop range split kind of screws our opponent over here. But we can look at many different kind of ways this manifests on the turn as well, pre-flop. So this is something to definitely keep in your mind and get familiar with. Here's another spot where the premature range splitting can work against our opponents, and similar to our hand from the Caribbean, where this is a spot where we're talking about a tighter player splitting their range on the flop, or us suspecting he will be splitting his range on the flop and taking advantage of it on the turn with kind of a increased bluff frequency. So this hand happened in a 10K World Poker Tour event in California a couple years back. 1K big blind playing 40K effective. I opened early position with queen 10 offsuit, big blind defends. This player I thought was on the tighter side, so kind of put him in as a type 3 professional. And flop came 6-4-2 rainbow. I bet 2K and big blind calls. So about 35% pop bet there. Big blind defends, and kind of working under the assumption that villain would be check raising his sets, check raising his two pair, check raising his flop straight with very high frequency, and did not have enough traps in his range. And working off that assumption, when the turn comes this jack of clubs, which is definitely a card that favors our range over his range in the sense that he probably isn't calling with too many jacks besides ace jack or hands that make two pair. So we're kind of able to take advantage of that dynamic turn, which helps our range, along with the idea that he's probably not trapping us with a huge hand because of the premature range split read. So I'm able to just bet the pot here 9K on the turn. And this is something that, even without the read on the splitting his range, we will be bluffing this card anyway a lot of times with hands like queen 10 offsuit when we do get these jack, queen, king turns that favor the early position raiser, especially on this board after we open and c-bet. So this is a spot where I'm sure a computer would play mixed here on the turn, probably not a pure bet, but I think with the added read, we're able to kind of play this more aggressive strategy, kind of bluffing every time here on the turn and really planning to put a lot of aggression on the river, similar to the Caribbean hand where there may still be some pair and straight draw combos that he calls on the turn that kind of stick around trying to improve and have trouble calling pot size river shove.